New York City's primary race, though. It featured a new ranked choice voting system for Democrats. Former New York City police captain Eric Adams is the early leader with 32% of the first choice vote. Trailing Adams, former counsel to Mayor Bill de Blasio, Maya Wiley at 22%, and former City Sanitation Commissioner Catherine Garcia. She's got 20% of the vote. In fourth place is 2020 presidential candidate Andrew Yang, who led this race early on, but who conceded last night. He has left the race. It could be a few weeks before we find out who exactly will face Republican Curtis Sliwa. He won with 72% of the vote.
I'm not going to lie. I like the beret. I always have. I always will.
And you know, you have to respect that he's stayed with the beret for 40 years. It's never gone anywhere. He's consistent on that issue. Let's go to the big board. We're happy to say we find national political correspondent for NBC News and MSNBC, the legend himself, Steve Kornacki. Steve, good morning. It's great to see you. So help us make some sense out of ranked choice voting and the numbers that came in last night.
Yeah, great to see you guys, too. And so what you're looking at here, ranked choice voting, a very complicated Rube Goldberg kind of device here used to get the winner of this primary in New York City. But what you're looking at is just about all of the vote that was cast yesterday, that was cast in the early voting process. This is the first choice of those voters. When they go in their ballot, they can rank their first choice, their second choice, their third choice, their fourth choice, all the way through their fifth choice. There are still some mail-in votes that are not even going to be open for another week. There's probably about 100,000 of those. There's probably more than 800,000 that are counted here. There's another 100,000 or so mail ballots that will be added in about a week's time. Then you'll have everybody's first choice vote. And at that point, they'll then begin running through the sort of instant runoff process. It basically means they take a look, they say who's in last place, that candidate gets eliminated. They look at, okay, who was that candidate's voters' second choice, and they reallocate it, run the numbers, and they'll do that and do that and do that until one is left. So that's the very complicated process that lies ahead. But there is some clarity, given that this is the bulk of the vote, just in terms of the first choice. This is the bulk of it right here. There is some clarity in these numbers. And first of all, you can draw a line right here. Andrew Yang, the former presidential candidate, some early polls in this race showed doing very well. He conceded last night. He's not going to win. Anybody south of him here on this list does not have any chance of winning this. So already you've got it down here functionally, the suspense here is at Adams, Wiley, or Garcia. And again, you could draw another line between Adams and Wiley and Garcia. That's a significant lead right now that Adams has over Wiley and Garcia. What we want to watch to see is when I say those mail ballots that'll be in about a week's time, that they'll begin counting in about a week's time. Does one of these two candidates, Wiley or Garcia, have an edge there with those mail-in ballots? Can they get a little bit closer to Eric Adams before they begin that extremely complicated ranked choice process? I say that because New York City is the largest jurisdiction to attempt something like this, ranked choice voting, but it's been around for a while in a number of places. And if you look at the history of ranked choice voting, when you got all of the results for first choice in any election in this country that's done ranked choice voting, the biggest gap that's been overcome by a candidate who wasn't leading after they tabulated all the first choice. The biggest gap ever overcome was 9.3%. And if you look at it right now, if I actually put the decimal points on here, Maya Wiley currently trails Eric Adams by 9.4%. So that would actually be outside currently, just by a touch, outside the biggest gap ever overcome in one of these. So that is, you know, there's suspense, there's uncertainty. This is something new, but that does look like a pretty substantial lead that Eric Adams has. And in fact, if you break it down, 5 boroughs of New York City, I think it's very interesting. All but Manhattan, Eric Adams is leading, is carrying. That's Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, and the Bronx. There's a breadth, at least so far, to this Eric Adams coalition. It's not being matched by anyone else.
And so, Steve, that's why I think the consensus this morning seems to be it's not over, but that Eric Adams is likely to go on and win. But based on the numbers you've seen just overnight in the last few hours, does one or the other of the two candidates, Maya Wiley and Catherine Garcia, look more likely to challenge Eric Adams if anyone's going to?
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting, because if you look between these two candidates here, Maya Wiley and Catherine Garcia, right now, obviously, Wiley is a little bit closer to Adams, but I think if there's any expectation here about who's going to do a little bit better with these mail-in ballots, just when you look at where the mail-in vote is expected to be the largest and how the candidates have been doing and the results we've seen, I think there's an expectation that Garcia might actually do better than Wiley with the mail-in vote. So instead of Wiley drawing from 10 points behind Adams to maybe, 6 or 7 in the mail-in voting, I think it may be that Garcia is able to get within about 9 or 10 of Eric Adams. So it actually might end up helping Adams. If what I'm describing plays out, that ends up helping Adams, I think, potentially. One other thing I would just point out, the final Marist poll, the Marist WNBC poll that played out all of those different rounds of ranked choice voting, their final poll ended up with a final 3 of Adams, Wiley, and Garcia. And in the second to last round, the candidate who got cut was Wiley. So it became ultimately an Adams-Garcia race. And the question was, all right, Wiley, are her voters second choice, more Garcia or more Adams? And the Marist poll found there were 27 points in the voting that went for Wiley. 14 of them went to Garcia, and 13 of them went to Adams. In other words, the final Marist WNBC poll did not find that there was a substantial advantage in Maya Wiley's second-choice voters for Garcia or for Adams. They found it was basically even between those candidates. And again, anything approaching even when you're talking about second-choice distribution right now is going to help Eric Adams. What one of these candidates, Wiley or Garcia, is going to need is a tremendous imbalance when you start consolidating through the ranked choice process. Again, at the gap you're looking at here, we haven't really seen elections potentially where something like that's been overcome. But again, we're saying this is a big grand experiment in New York, so we'll find out.